Daniel Hale had learned to trust silence more than alarms. In deep space, alarms were common. A power dip, a pressure wobble, a stubborn valve, a lazy sensor. But real trouble often arrived without sound, like a thought you could not shake, like a shadow that did not belong to any object. His ship, the Muirfield, drifted at the edge of a collapsed star corridor, where light bent strangely and the darkness looked thicker than it should. The corridor used to be a trade route, a straight line through a crowded region of systems. Now it was a broken bridge of warped gravity and scattered debris, the kind of place where old war machines and lost cargo went to sleep. Daniel was not a famous pilot. He was not a soldier with medals. He was an engineer who could fly when needed, because on salvage crews, everyone learned to do a little bit of everything. If you wanted to keep breathing out there, you learned fast. The salvage contract on his display looked normal enough. Escort and assess drifting vessel. Aurelian Empire signature. Coalition oversight. That last part made Daniel frown. The Galactic Coalition liked to put its stamp on anything important, and Aurelians were always important. They were old by galactic standards, quiet, advanced. They did not speak unless they had to, and when they did, everyone listened. Aurelians did not drift in the dark like forgotten junk. Daniel leaned forward, tapping the screen until the vessel's outline filled his cockpit window. Even from far away, it looked too smooth, too clean, like it had been carved from one piece of metal and polished by patient hands. It had no obvious engine glow, no radio chatter, no running lights, just a silent shape hanging where it should not be. "Receiving Coalition ping," said Myra from the co-pilot's seat. She was Daniel's partner on most runs, a calm voice who could read a sensor chart like a poem. "They want us to hold position until the boarding team arrives," Daniel sighed. "Boarding team, of course." Mara glanced at him. "You don't like soldiers on your ship." "I don't like soldiers on anyone's ship," Daniel said. "They walk around like the universe owes them space." Mara gave a small smile. "Sometimes it does." Daniel watched the Aurelian cruiser through the forward glass. It was close enough now that its surface details showed like faint ripples, patterns that shifted when his eyes tried to focus. Almost like the hull did not want to be stared at too hard. "How long until the team arrives?" he asked. Myra checked the timer. 35 minutes. Daniel rolled his shoulders, feeling the tightness from hours in the pilot chair. "Plenty of time for me to imagine 10 ways this goes wrong." "Only 10?" Mara asked. He laughed quietly, but his stomach stayed tense. The Coalition boarding team arrived in a sharp-edged shuttle with bright insignias and bright confidence. When it docked with the Muirfield, Daniel met them at the airlock with Mara and 2 other crew members. The team leader stepped out first, Lieutenant Kess. Clean uniform, hard eyes, and a calm voice that did not invite debate. "Daniel Hale?" Kess asked. "That's me," Daniel said. "You're the escort pilot and engineering lead." "On paper," Daniel said. "In reality, I'm the guy who fixes the toilet system when it starts making noises." A couple of the soldiers chuckled. Kess didn't. "We're boarding the Aurelian vessel," Kess said. "Coalition authority. You'll provide access, route guidance, and technical support. You will not wander off. You will not touch anything you don't understand. And you will do exactly what I say." Mara's eyebrow lifted slightly. Daniel kept his face neutral. "Understood," Daniel said, because arguing with a Coalition lieutenant in the middle of nowhere usually ended in paperwork at best, confinement at worst. Kess nodded once, then turned to his team. 6 soldiers, armored and sealed, moving with the quiet rhythm of professionals. 2 carried scanning devices. 1 carried a compact drone. Kess looked back at Daniel. "You've been near the corridor before?" "Yeah," Daniel said. "This region likes to eat engines if you get too close to the wrong kind of gravity pocket." "Then you know what to watch for," Kess said. Daniel didn't respond. He knew what to watch for, yes. But he also knew that the things you could not watch for were the ones that mattered most. They moved through the Muirfield's docking tube, crossing the small gap to the Aurelian cruiser. As they approached, Daniel's suit display tried to translate hull markings. At first it showed nothing. Then slowly symbols began to appear like ink spreading in water. Mara noticed too. "Is it reacting to us?" "It might be reacting to language," Daniel said, "or motion, or heat, or just because it can." The docking clamp engaged with a soft thud. For a moment everything felt normal. Then the Aurelian airlock opened without a sound. No pressure release hiss, no warning lights. The door simply slid apart like it had never been closed. Kess raised a hand and his team paused. He pointed and the drone floated forward, its tiny lights scanning. The air inside the Aurelian ship looked clear. Clean, too clean. Atmosphere stable, one soldier reported. Oxygen present, pressure normal, temperature comfortable. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Comfortable for who? The soldier glanced at Kess, uncertain. Kess ignored Daniel's question and led the team in. Daniel stepped across the threshold and a cold feeling crawled up his back. The corridor was wide and smooth, with walls that curved in gentle arcs. The lighting was soft, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. It did not flicker. It did not buzz. It did not cast harsh shadows. It was a ship designed to calm you. Daniel did not feel calm. They walked in silence, their boots making almost no sound on the floor. Daniel expected to see signs of struggle, damage, at least loose items, but the corridor was perfect. Myra whispered through the private comm line. "No dust, no debris," Daniel whispered back, like nobody ever lived here. The team reached a junction where the corridor split in 3 directions. Kess signaled for a halt. "Scan," he ordered. 2 soldiers moved forward using their devices. One of them frowned. "Interference," he said. "Some kind of adaptive field, it's reshaping the readings." Kess frowned. "Can you bypass?" "Trying." Daniel leaned closer to the junction's wall. The surface looked like polished stone, but when he brought his glove near it, it warmed slightly as if responding to his presence. He pulled his hand back. "This ship is awake," he murmured. Kess turned sharply. "Explain." "It's reacting to us," Daniel said. "Maybe not in a hostile way, but it's not dead metal." Kess stared at him for a moment, then looked away. "We proceed." The ship guided them. Daniel realized it slowly, in the way the lights brightened ahead and dimmed behind. In the way the corridors opened as they approached, choosing paths with gentle certainty. It was not random. It was directing them somewhere. Kess either didn't notice or didn't care. The soldiers followed orders, and the ship offered a path, so they took it. They passed sealed doors with no handles, only shifting symbols. Mara tried to record everything, her wrist camera capturing the patterns as they changed. The symbols seemed to study the camera and then rearrange themselves, as if deciding what to show. Finally, they reached a larger door. It was taller than the others and marked with a symbol that stayed steady. A circle within a circle with a line crossing through like a horizon. The door opened before Kess gave the order. Inside was a chamber that took Daniel's breath away. It looked like a bridge, but not like any human bridge. There were no chairs, no screens. Instead, there were platforms that rose like low islands from the floor. Overhead, a faint pattern of lights formed a map of stars, shifting slowly. And at the center of the room, standing alone, was an Aurelian. She was tall and slender, with pale, shimmering skin that reflected the star map above. Her hair fell in smooth silver strands, like threads of moonlight. Her clothing was simple but unmistakably royal, woven with fine patterns that looked like they were moving. She stood with her hands relaxed at her sides, not restrained, not afraid. The soldiers raised their weapons instantly. "Hold," Kess ordered, but his voice tightened. He stepped forward half a pace. "Identify yourself." The Aurelian turned her head slowly. Her eyes were bright, a clear silver that seemed to hold depth like an ocean. Her gaze passed over Kess, over the soldiers, over Myra. Then it stopped on Daniel, and she smiled. It was not a wide grin, not dramatic, just a gentle curve of the lips like the smallest sunrise. Daniel froze. For a heartbeat, the room felt warmer, like something had shifted. Myra inhaled sharply over comms. "Did she?" "Yes," Daniel whispered. Kess lifted his weapon slightly, not aiming directly at her but making his intent clear. "Princess Lyra of the Aurelian Empire," he said, reading a name from his display. "You are under coalition protection. Remain where you are." The princess did not move. She kept looking at Daniel, her smile steady, almost private, like it belonged to a conversation only they were having. Daniel's throat felt dry. He did not know why, but he had the sudden, strange certainty that she could hear his thoughts like they were spoken. Then the star map above them dimmed. A faint hum filled the air like a faraway chord. The platforms around the princess lit up in thin lines. The room's calm feeling snapped into something sharper, not panic, precision. Kess's team reacted instantly, forming a defensive arc. The drone rose higher, scanning. "Defense systems coming online," a soldier warned. "Multiple power surges." Kess shouted, "Stand down, we're not hostile." The princess's smile faded, not into fear, but into something like regret. She said a single word in her language, soft, musical, and completely untranslatable. Then the room changed. Walls that looked smooth became layered with glowing patterns. The air grew heavier as if the ship itself drew in a breath. The door behind them began to close. Daniel felt the pressure in his ears and grabbed the doorway frame. "Back!" Kess shouted. "Fall back!" The soldiers moved as a unit, but the door was closing faster than it should have. Daniel and Mara rushed toward it. Daniel reached the threshold just as it narrowed. He turned and looked back. The princess was still standing in the center of the room. She did not chase them. She did not raise a weapon. She only watched Daniel, her face calm. And then, just before the door sealed, she smiled again, smaller, almost sad. The door shut. The lights in the corridor flared bright, and the hum rose into a warning tone that vibrated through their bones. Kess slammed his fist into the sealed door. "Override it." One of the soldiers attempted to access the panel, but the symbols twisted away from his inputs like water avoiding a hand. "Locked out," the soldier said. Daniel stepped forward, staring at the door. His heart hammered. "It let us in," he said, "so it can let us out." Kess turned on him. "Then get us out." Daniel forced his breathing to steady. He placed his glove against the door's surface. It warmed instantly. He spoke slowly, not sure why. "We're leaving, we're going back." The symbols flickered. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a line of light traced along the door's edge, and it opened, just enough for them to pass. They did not hesitate. The soldiers moved first. Mara followed. Daniel went last, glancing back once more into the empty corridor. He did not know what he expected to see, but he hoped, ridiculously, that the princess would be there again, waiting with that impossible smile. The corridor was empty. They returned to the docking tube, hurried, tense. The Aurelian ship remained calm now, as if the defensive surge had never happened. But Daniel could still feel it watching them, aware of every breath. Back aboard the Muirfield, Kess sealed the airlock and removed his helmet. His jaw was tight. "We report," he said. "Coalition Command needs to know the princess is alive and the ship's systems are active." Mara took off her helmet too. Her face was pale. "Why did she smile at him?" she asked softly, nodding toward Daniel. Kess's eyes snapped to Daniel. "Yes," he said. "Why did she?" Daniel spread his hands. "I don't know." But the truth was, he felt like he should know, like he had forgotten something important. Kess stepped closer. "You're going to tell me everything you felt, everything you saw, everything she did." Daniel met Kess's stare. "She looked at me," he said. "Then she smiled, that's it." Kess didn't like that answer, but he had no choice but to accept it for now. They filed into the comm room to send the report. Coalition Command responded quickly, as if they had been waiting. A stern voice came through. "You confirmed Princess Lyra. Alive, security systems active, no hostile engagement, stand by for further instructions." Kess asked, "Permission to attempt contact?" There was a pause, then, "Negative, maintain distance. Do not reboard, Aurelian affairs are sensitive." Daniel listened, feeling frustration rise. The princess was there, alone, and the coalition wanted to wait. It felt wrong. After the call ended, the soldiers returned to their shuttle, leaving the salvage crew with a ship full of unanswered questions. Mara lingered behind with Daniel in the cockpit. She leaned back in her seat, rubbing her temples. "That ship gave me chills," she said. Daniel stared at the dark window where the Aurelian cruiser hung like a silent moon. "It wasn't trying to hurt us." "It locked you in the bridge," Mara pointed out. "It could have done worse," Daniel said. "If it wanted us gone, it could have vented the corridor or shut the dock. It didn't." Mara studied him. "And the princess, you've never seen an Aurelian express emotion like that, right?" Daniel shook his head. "They're known for being controlled, that's what everyone says." "Then why smile at you?" Daniel didn't answer. He didn't have one. Instead, he tried to focus on the sensor readings. The Aurelian ship remained inactive, no engine output, no comm emissions. Still, the hull patterns seemed to shimmer in Daniel's peripheral vision, like they were slightly out of sync with reality. Mara stood and walked behind him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Maybe she smiled because she was relieved," she said. "Maybe she's been alone out there a long time." "Maybe," Daniel said, but the smile had not looked like relief. It had looked like recognition. Hours passed slowly. Coalition Command kept them on standby. A second boarding team was mentioned, then delayed. Aurelian diplomats were mentioned, then redirected. Everything became careful, cautious, slow. Daniel hated slow when something felt urgent. He tried to sleep, but the moment replayed every time he closed his eyes. The princess turning, the stillness. The way her eyes stopped on him like she had found the one face she wanted. By early ship morning, Daniel sat alone in the small engineering bay, pretending to check a power conduit. Myra entered quietly, holding a mug of heated drink. "You're not fooling anyone," she said. Daniel took the mug and nodded thanks. "I'm fooling myself." Myra leaned against a console. "Do you think she's in danger?" Daniel hesitated. "I think she's waiting." "For what?" Daniel looked down at his hands. "I don't know, but I have a feeling the ship wanted us to see her." "And she wanted me to see her." Mara's expression grew serious. "That's a dangerous thought." Daniel gave a humorless smile. "Everything out here is dangerous." He returned to the cockpit, trying again to work, trying again to wait. Then his console blinked. A private channel opened, one that did not match Coalition encryption or salvage frequencies. The ship's system flagged it as unknown, but it slipped through like a key sliding into a lock. Myra hurried in. "Did you open that?" Daniel shook his head slowly. "No." On the screen, a single symbol appeared. A circle within a circle with a horizon line, the same symbol from the door. Daniel's breath caught. "It's from the cruiser." Myra swallowed. "Can you trace it?" Daniel tried. The signal didn't behave like a normal transmission. It didn't arrive from a direction. It didn't have a source point. It was simply present. Then beneath the symbol, human text began to form, letter by letter, like the ship was learning how to write. "Return," Myra whispered. "That's an order," or an invitation. Daniel stared at the word until the letters burned into his mind. He felt a pull, a pressure behind his ribs, as if something inside him leaned toward that message like a compass turning toward north. Myra watched him carefully. "Coalition told us not to reboard." Daniel didn't look away from the screen. "Coalition isn't the one receiving messages." Myra stepped closer. "Daniel," he finally turned to her. In her eyes, he saw his own worry reflected, and underneath it, a question she did not want to ask out loud. "Are you going to do something stupid?" Daniel took a slow breath. "If I ignore this," he said quietly, "and something happens, I won't forgive myself." Myra set her jaw. "Then we do it smart," she said. Daniel blinked. "We?" Myra crossed her arms. "You're not going alone." Daniel wanted to argue. He wanted to tell her it was too risky. But he knew he wouldn't win, and he also knew deep down that he didn't want to face that ship alone. He nodded once. "Okay." They prepared quickly, keeping everything quiet. The soldiers were gone. Coalition Command was not actively monitoring their internal movement. Not yet. They sealed their suits, checked the docking tube, and powered a small utility craft that could latch onto the Aurelian cruiser without making a big signature flare. As they approached, the cruiser remained still like it was asleep. But Daniel could feel it, aware, waiting. The hull patterns brightened slightly as if greeting them. The airlock opened again, silent. Daniel and Myra exchanged a glance through their helmet visors. "Last chance to turn back," Myra said over comms. Daniel almost laughed because he knew there was no turning back the moment that word appeared. "Let's go," he said. They stepped inside. The corridor lights rose gently, guiding them forward. The ship did not feel angry. It felt focused, like a person who had made a decision and was carrying it out with calm purpose. Myra whispered, "It's leading us." Daniel nodded. "I know." They reached the junction again. This time, the corridor to the right lit brighter than the others. Daniel followed. His mind kept returning to the princess's smile. It was not just an expression. It was a message, a door opening in a place that had always been locked. When they reached the tall bridge door, it was already open. The chamber beyond was dimmer than before. The star map above was faint, like twilight. Princess Lyra stood near one of the platforms now, her posture relaxed, as if she had been waiting for them the whole time. No guards, no soldiers, no threat. She turned as they entered. Her eyes found Daniel instantly, and she smiled. Not sad this time, not uncertain. This smile carried a quiet confidence, like she was glad he had understood. Daniel stopped at the threshold, his heart beating so hard he could feel it in his fingertips. Myra stood beside him, frozen as well, not from fear, but from the strange weight of the moment. Lyra spoke, her voice soft and clear. The words were not in any language Daniel knew. But his suit translated anyway, the text appearing in his visor as if it had been waiting for this exact sentence. "You came back." Daniel's mouth went dry. He had 1,000 questions, but none of them could move past his lips. Myra, always the braver one in conversation, managed to speak. "Princess Lyra," she said carefully, "Coalition Command is looking for you. They want to send diplomats." Lyra's gaze flicked to Myra, respectful but distant. Then her eyes returned to Daniel like he was the only true point of connection. She took one step closer. No sudden movements, no aggression, just a step like someone approaching a candle in the dark. Daniel swallowed. "Why did you message me?" he asked, his voice low. Lyra tilted her head slightly. Her expression shifted, as if she was choosing words that could survive translation. The ship's lights brightened around Daniel, then dimmed again like it was listening. Lyra spoke again, and Daniel's visor displayed the translated words. "Because you are not calculated." Daniel stared, confused. "Not calculated?" Lyra's smile softened. "Your kind moves when outcome is unknown," Mara whispered. "She's talking about humans." Lyra nodded once, as if she understood the whisper too. Daniel's thoughts raced. "What do you want from me?" he asked. Lyra's eyes shimmered. She looked toward the star map above, then back to him. "An answer," her translation read, "and a choice." Daniel felt the room shift subtly again, not into a defense mode, but into something like readiness. The ship was preparing to show him something, or to ask something that could change everything. Mara's voice trembled slightly. "Daniel, this is bigger than salvage." He didn't take his eyes off Lyra. "I know." Lyra lifted her hand slowly, palm open. The gesture felt ancient, peaceful. A thin line of light appeared between her palm and the nearest platform, connecting like a thread. Then the platform came alive. Symbols surged across its surface. The star map overhead brightened, and the room filled with soft, layered tones, like music made from light. Daniel took a step forward, drawn in despite himself. And as the symbols shifted into patterns his mind could almost recognize, Daniel realized something that made his blood run cold and warm at the same time. Lyra's smile was not the mystery. It was the warning that the mystery had finally found him. And now she was about to show him why. Daniel felt as if the room itself was breathing. The thin line of light connecting Princess Lyra's hand to the platform shimmered like a living thread. Symbols moved across the surface in flowing waves, translating themselves slowly into shapes and diagrams that his mind could almost understand. Above them, the star map shifted, showing constellations Daniel had never seen and routes that bent through space in ways human ships could not travel. Mara stepped closer beside him, her voice soft over the comms. "Is that a navigation system?" Daniel shook his head slowly. "No, it's more than that." Lyra watched him carefully, as if measuring his reactions. Her silver eyes held curiosity and something deeper, hope mixed with caution. The translation text appeared again in Daniel's visor as she spoke. "This shows possible futures," the translation read. "Paths chosen and paths avoided." Daniel stared at the glowing patterns. He saw lines branching, merging, ending abruptly, or continuing into bright clusters. It felt less like a map and more like a story being written in real time. "You're showing us predictions?" Mara asked. Lyra nodded gently. Daniel crossed his arms, thinking. "Coalition intelligence mentioned Aurelian predictive technology," he said. "Systems that calculate outcomes before they happen." Lyra's gaze sharpened at his words. She seemed pleased that he understood part of it. "Yes," the translation said. "Our civilization built its strength on certainty. We calculate before acting. We avoid mistakes by knowing outcomes." Daniel frowned. "That sounds useful." "It was," Lyra replied. The tone of her voice shifted slightly and Daniel sensed sadness behind the calm. She gestured toward the platform. The glowing lines changed. Several paths appeared bright and stable, while others flickered and collapsed into darkness. "These are futures calculated without human presence," the translation explained. Daniel leaned closer. The stable lines looked smooth, predictable, perfect. Then new lines appeared, colored differently. They moved sharply, changing direction suddenly, crossing through areas that had been marked impossible. "These include humans," the translation added. The lines were chaotic compared to the others, but strangely they reached places the stable paths never did. Daniel's eyes widened. "You can't predict us." Lyra's smile returned faintly. "Correct." Mara glanced between them. "That's why you called him back," Lyra nodded once. Daniel felt a strange pressure in his chest. "Why me specifically? There are billions of humans." Lyra hesitated, as if searching for words that would not be misunderstood. "When I studied your species," the translation began, "I observed many who act despite uncertainty. You show kindness without reward, courage without guarantee. You represent this pattern." Daniel almost laughed. "You've got the wrong guy. I'm just a repair tech who flies cargo." Lyra stepped closer. The distance between them shrank, and Daniel felt a strange calm spreading through him. You returned, she said simply. The words landed heavier than he expected. Mara crossed her arms thoughtfully. You said your predictions are failing, she said. Is that because of humans? Lyra nodded again, but this time her expression turned serious. Our systems were designed to predict every variable. Recently, something changed. A force emerged beyond calculation. Our algorithms cannot see beyond it. She lifted her hand slightly and the star map zoomed outward, showing clusters of systems. A dark region appeared, spreading slowly like ink in water. Daniel felt a chill. What is that? Lyra's gaze hardened. Unknown, Mara leaned forward. A new enemy? Perhaps, Lyra said. Or a consequence. The dark region expanded across several star routes. Ships appeared as tiny points, vanishing when they entered the shadowed area. Daniel swallowed. You think this thing is coming here? Lyra met his eyes. Yes. Silence filled the room for a long moment. Daniel felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him. He was not a strategist or a hero, yet somehow he stood in the center of an alien crisis. What do you need from me? He asked quietly. Lyra's answer came without hesitation. Perspective, Daniel blinked. Perspective. Our people hesitate, she explained. We wait for certainty, but now certainty does not exist. We require someone who moves without knowing the ending. Mara smiled faintly. That definitely sounds human, Daniel exhaled slowly. So you want advice? Lyra tilted her head. More than advice, cooperation. Before Daniel could respond, the room dimmed suddenly. The star map flickered and a low hum ran through the floor. Mara looked around quickly. Did something just change? Lyra's expression tightened. She turned toward the far wall where symbols began flashing rapidly. External detection, the translation read. Multiple vessels approaching. Daniel felt his stomach drop. Coalition ships. Lyra shook her head. The star map shifted, zooming toward a cluster of signals. Angular shapes appeared, sharp and unfamiliar. They moved in coordinated patterns, faster than Daniel expected. Unknown faction, Lyra said. They seek this ship. Mara cursed softly under her breath. You're telling me someone tracked us here? Lyra looked at Daniel. They followed the disturbance created when your people arrived. Daniel grimaced. Great, we accidentally rang the dinner bell. The hum grew louder. Defensive systems activated again, but this time Daniel sensed urgency rather than warning. We need to leave, Mara said. If they're hostile, Lyra raised a hand gently. Running alone will not succeed. Daniel's mind raced. Then what? Lyra stepped closer, her eyes intense. You suggested chaos before, she said. Unpredictable movement. Daniel blinked. When we first met, she replied. Your thoughts were clear. You considered unpredictable action as strength. Daniel felt embarrassed that she had noticed his internal reactions. That was just instinct. Lyra nodded. Instinct may be the solution. Outside, faint vibrations shook the hull. Mara checked her wrist display. They're close, too close. Daniel forced himself to think calmly. If they expect Aurelian logic, we do the opposite. Lyra watched him carefully. Explain. Daniel paced slowly, trying to visualize the ship systems. You said your people calculate optimal paths, so enemies probably expect predictable defensive maneuvers. Instead, we do things that make no logical sense. Mara raised an eyebrow. You want to fly like a human cargo pilot. Daniel smiled slightly. Exactly. Lyra considered his words. For a moment, Daniel feared she would reject the idea. Instead, she nodded. I will trust you. The simple statement hit him harder than any command. Lights shifted across the room as control pathways opened. A platform rose slightly, inviting him closer. Daniel hesitated. I don't know how to operate Aurelian tech. Lyra extended her hand again. The thin thread of light stretched toward him. Interface adapts, she said. He swallowed and reached forward. The moment his glove touched the light, images flooded his mind. Not overwhelming, more like suggestions. Pathways, options, energy flows. The ship translated itself into concepts he could grasp. Mara watched in awe. Is he okay? Lyra answered softly. Yes, the ship listens. Daniel breathed slowly, focusing on the sensation. He saw the approaching ships as bright markers on a shifting grid. Their movement patterns were rigid, calculated. They're expecting us to run, he murmured. So we don't run. He redirected power towards seemingly random systems, turning lights off in certain sections, sending decoy signals into empty space, rotating the cruiser at odd angles. Mara laughed softly. Coalition pilots would call this madness. Lyra watched closely, her expression filled with fascination. Outside, the unknown ships adjusted their formation, clearly confused. Daniel grinned despite the tension. See, they're trying to predict us. The cruiser moved suddenly, not along a straight escape route, but in a looping arc that brought it closer to a debris field. The maneuver looked reckless, but it forced the enemy ships to split. Warning tones sounded as stray debris passed close to the hull. Mara grabbed a console for balance. "You're pushing it," Daniel nodded. "That's the point." Lyra's voice carried quiet excitement. "Their prediction models fail." Daniel laughed nervously. "Welcome to humanity." The cruiser slipped through the debris with impossible grace. Behind them, two enemy ships collided slightly while trying to adjust. Mara whooped. "That worked." Daniel's smile faded quickly as more signals appeared. "They're not giving up." Lyra studied the map. "We require distraction." Daniel thought fast. "Can the ship create false signatures?" Lyra nodded. "Yes. Then we make them chase ghosts." Energy surged through the cruiser as multiple phantom signals launched outward, each mimicking the ship's signature. Enemy vessels split again, uncertain which target was real. For a moment, silence returned. Daniel released a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. Lyra looked at him with clear admiration. "Your choices break expectation." Daniel shrugged awkwardly. "I just hate doing what people expect." Mara chuckled. "That explains a lot." But the relief did not last long. A new signal appeared, larger, stronger, moving steadily toward them. Lyra's expression turned serious again. "Command vessel." Daniel felt tension coil inside him. "Then we're not done." He adjusted the ship's course again, guiding it toward a narrow gravitational fold near the collapsed corridor. Mara stared at the trajectory. "You can't be serious." Daniel smiled slightly. "They'll never expect us to go through there." Lyra studied the path and then nodded. "High risk," Daniel shrugged. "High reward." The cruiser accelerated. As they approached the fold, space itself seemed to ripple. Lights bent, colors stretched, and the hum of the engines deepened. Behind them, the command vessel followed, confident, relentless. Daniel focused entirely on instinct now. He made small adjustments that felt right rather than logical, trusting the ship's adaptive interface to support him. They entered the fold. For a moment, everything went silent. Then they emerged on the other side, far from where the enemy expected. The pursuing ship attempted to follow but hesitated, recalculating. Daniel laughed with relief. "Got you?" Lyra's smile returned, brighter this time, filled with genuine emotion. "You move with faith," she said. Daniel shook his head. "More like stubbornness." Mara wiped sweat from her brow. "Either way, we're alive." The cruiser slowed, drifting into quiet space once more. Daniel leaned back, exhausted but exhilarated. Lyra stepped closer, studying him with new intensity. "You see paths others cannot," she said softly. Daniel met her gaze. "I just take chances." Lyra's smile deepened slightly. "Then perhaps," she said, "chance is what will save us." And as the stars settled into calm around them, Daniel realized that the real journey had only just begun. The silence after the escape felt almost unreal. Stars stretched endlessly outside the curved view of the chamber, calm and distant, as if nothing dangerous had happened. Yet Daniel knew better. The unknown faction had followed them across unstable space, and even now he felt like they were only a few steps ahead of something far larger. He stood near the glowing platform, hands resting lightly at his sides. The thread of light connecting him to the ship faded slowly, leaving behind a faint warmth in his palm. Mara moved closer, checking readings on her wrist display with focused attention. Princess Lyra watched both of them quietly. Her expression was thoughtful, but beneath it Daniel sensed a change. She looked less like a distant royal figure now and more like someone standing beside allies. "The enemy command vessel stopped pursuing," Lyra said, the translation appearing in Daniel's visor. Mara exhaled. "So we lost them?" Lyra hesitated. "We delayed them, that is different." Daniel nodded. He expected that answer. Nothing about this situation felt finished. The star map above shifted again, showing their new location far from the collapsed corridor. Soft lines traced potential routes outward, but several of them faded into uncertain gray. Lyra stepped closer to the platform and raised her hand. Symbols changed rapidly. "Our predictive systems remain damaged," she said. "Future paths unclear." Daniel folded his arms, studying the display. "You relied on prediction to survive before." "Yes, and now you can't." Lyra inclined her head slightly. Daniel thought for a moment, then said quietly, "Maybe that's not a weakness." Lyra looked at him with curiosity. Humans don't know the future, Daniel continued. We just make decisions and deal with the results. Mara smiled faintly. Sometimes we deal with them badly. Daniel laughed softly. True. Lyra watched their exchange with fascination. Your species accepts uncertainty, she said. We don't have a choice, Daniel replied. Life would stop if we waited for perfect answers. The room grew still again as if the ship itself listened. Lyra turned toward the star map. The dark region they had seen before expanded slowly across nearby systems. The shape seemed almost alive, growing not in straight lines but in organic curves. This phenomenon advances, she said. Our analysts believe it seeks highly advanced technology. Mara's eyes widened. So it's hunting you. Lyra did not deny it. Daniel's stomach tightened. If it reaches your empire, Lyra finished the thought quietly, our civilization may fall. Silence filled the chamber. Daniel felt the weight of that statement settle over him. This was no longer just about one alien princess or a drifting ship. Entire worlds could be at risk. What do you need? He asked again. Lyra's silver eyes met his. A decision. She touched the platform and the star map zoomed outward again. Several strategic locations appeared highlighted, gathering points, supply routes, diplomatic zones. Our people debate retreat, she explained. Others wish to confront the threat directly. Both options rely on prediction, but prediction fails. Daniel understood now. You want something unexpected, he said. Yes, Mara leaned forward. Like baiting them somewhere? Lyra paused, considering. Daniel felt a spark of an idea forming. If the enemy expects you to run or fight normally, maybe we do neither. Lyra's expression brightened slightly. Explain, she said. Daniel began pacing slowly, organizing his thoughts. You said humans disrupt prediction models, so we create a plan that relies on unpredictability, something they can't calculate. Mara nodded slowly. An action that doesn't look logical. Daniel pointed at the star map. What if we go somewhere that has no strategic value, somewhere nobody would expect the Aurelian princess to go? Lyra studied the map carefully. There is such a place, she said after a moment. She touched a distant region, a quiet sector far from major trade routes. Old exploration zone, she explained, abandoned by most civilizations. Mara frowned. Wouldn't that isolate us? Daniel shrugged. Maybe. But if the enemy relies on tracking strategic importance, they might hesitate or misjudge. Lyra's smile returned slowly. You think like a variable, she said. Daniel wasn't sure whether that was a compliment, but it felt like one. The cruiser shifted course again, engines humming softly as they moved toward the new destination. Hours passed quietly. Daniel and Mara remained in the chamber with Lyra, discussing human and Aurelian differences. Lyra asked many questions about human history, not just wars or technology, but small things like family traditions, humor, and why humans often chose difficult paths even when easier ones existed. Daniel found himself relaxing more with each conversation. The earlier tension faded, replaced by a strange sense of trust. At one point, Lyra asked, "Why did you return after the first meeting?" Daniel hesitated. "I didn't know why you smiled," he admitted, "and I couldn't ignore that." Lyra's gaze softened. For my people, she said, smiles are rare. They are given when something unexpected brings hope. Daniel felt warmth rise in his chest. Mara watched them quietly, a small smile on her face. Suddenly the ship's lights shifted again, turning slightly sharper. Lyra turned toward the star map. They have found us. Multiple signals appeared behind them. Daniel groaned. Of course they did. The enemy fleet moved differently now, less cautious, more direct. They learned from before, Mara said. Lyra nodded. Their patterns evolve. Daniel clenched his jaw. Then we evolve faster. He stepped toward the platform again, reconnecting with the ship's interface. The thread of light formed instantly, welcoming him. This time the flow of information felt clearer, as if the ship had grown more familiar with him. He studied the environment around them, small asteroid clusters, electromagnetic storms, and unstable energy pockets. An idea formed quickly. We don't run straight, he said. We lead them through chaos. Lyra smiled faintly. The cruiser accelerated, weaving through scattered debris fields. Daniel intentionally made sudden course changes, creating confusion among the pursuing ships. Mara monitored their energy levels. We can't keep this up forever. Daniel nodded. I know. Lyra watched the enemy's signals carefully. They adapt again, she said quietly. The command vessel moved ahead of the others, predicting their path more effectively this time. Daniel exhaled slowly. Then we need something bigger. His eyes landed on a large energy storm ahead, a swirling region where space itself flickered. Mara's voice rose slightly. That's dangerous. Daniel smiled. Exactly. Lyra studied the storm, then nodded. High unpredictability. The cruiser plunged into the storm. Lightning-like energy flashed around them, but the ship's systems held strong. Daniel guided them through twisting paths, trusting instinct over logic. Behind them, enemy ships struggled to maintain formation. Suddenly, the storm surged, creating a massive wave of interference. Daniel seized the moment. Now, he whispered. Lyra activated a signal burst, not a weapon, but a transmission. It carried data revealing the growing threat to the Galactic Coalition and other civilizations. Mara stared. You're broadcasting everything? Lyra nodded. Truth is also a weapon. The signal spread outward, impossible to ignore. Enemy ships hesitated, their movements slowing. Daniel grinned. They didn't expect transparency. Lyra looked at him with admiration. Another human tactic. As the cruiser exited the storm, the enemy fleet broke formation. Some ships retreated, uncertain now that their secrecy had vanished. Silence returned gradually. Daniel leaned back, exhausted. We did it, Mara said softly. Lyra turned toward Daniel. Her smile was different now, deeper, filled with gratitude. You asked earlier why I smiled when we first met, she said. Daniel nodded. Lyra stepped closer, her voice gentle. Our prophecy spoke of a variable, not a hero, not a ruler, but a being who acts beyond prediction. When I saw you, I recognized that pattern. Daniel laughed nervously. So you thought I was some kind of destiny? Lyra shook her head. No, I recognized hope. The words settled quietly between them. The star map stabilized above, showing new alliances forming as her transmission reached distant systems. Mara crossed her arms. Looks like you changed more than one future. Daniel shrugged. I just made choices. Lyra smiled warmly. That is why humanity matters, she said. You move forward even when the path is unclear. The cruiser drifted peacefully now, danger fading behind them. Daniel looked out at the stars, finally understanding why the princess had smiled. It was never about saving her. It was about reminding her people, and perhaps himself, that uncertainty was not weakness, it was freedom. And as he stood beside Lyra, watching new paths open across the galaxy, Daniel realized that their journey together was only beginning, shaped not by prediction but by the courage to choose without knowing the ending.